Hey, and welcome to The Writer with a Cause. In this video, we'll be diving into Aphorism 6 in the prologue of Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spake Zarathustra. Let's put on our close reading caps and open up our minds as the text reveals itself to us. And if you'd like to jump ahead to the analysis section of this video, you'll find that timestamp in the description below. Alright, without further ado, let's close read. Prologue, Aphorism 6, Thus Spake Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. Then, however, something happened which made every mouth mute and every eye fixed. In the meantime, of course, the rope dancer had commenced his performance. He had come out at a little door and was going along the rope, which was stretched between two towers, so it hung above the marketplace and the people. When he was just midway across, the little door opened once more, and a gaudily dressed fellow like a buffoon sprang out and went rapidly after the first one. "Go on, halt foot!" cried his frightful voice. "Go on, lazy bones, interloper, sallow face, lest I tickle thee with my heel. What dost thou here between the towers? The tower is the place for thee. Thou shouldst be locked up. To one better than thyself thou blockest the way." And with every word he came nearer and nearer the first one. When, however, he was but a step behind, there happened the frightful thing which made every mouth mute and every eye fixed. He uttered a yell like a devil, and jumped over the other who was in his way. The latter, however, when he thus saw his rival triumph, lost at the same time his head and his footing on the rope. He threw his pole away and shot downward faster than it, like an eddy of arms and legs into the depth. The marketplace and the people were like the sea when the storm cometh on. They all flew apart and in disorder, especially where the body was about to fall. Zarathustra, however, remained standing, and just beside him fell the body, badly injured and disfigured, but not yet dead. After a while, consciousness returned to the shattered man, and he saw Zarathustra kneeling beside him. "What art thou doing there?" said he at last. "I knew long ago that the devil would trip me up. Now he draggeth me to hell. Wilt thou prevent him?" "On mine honor, my friend," answered Zarathustra. "There is nothing of all that whereof thou speakest. There is no devil and no hell. Thy soul will be dead even sooner than thy body. Fear therefore nothing any more." The man looked up distrustfully. "If thou speakest the truth," said he, "I lose nothing when I lose my life. I am not much more than an animal which hath been taught to dance by blows and scanty fare." "Not at all," said Zarathustra. "Thou hast made danger thy calling. Therein there is nothing contemptible. Now thou perishest by thy calling. Therefore will I bury thee with mine own hands." When Zarathustra had said this, the dying one did not reply further, but he moved his hand as if he sought the hand of Zarathustra in gratitude. I'm sharing here. In the blue are all of the annotations I took throughout the various times I've read this passage. And I'd like to go through this, passage by passage with you together. I'm going to be using a red highlighter and red pen going through it this time with you. So let's take a look at the opening few lines. "Then, however, something happened which made every mouth mute and every eye fixed. In the meantime, of course, the rope dancer had commenced his performance." So, when close reading, sometimes we'll take note of things that we don't entirely know what they mean yet. And that's something that I've kind of done here with the mouth mute and every eye fixed. My thesis so far, my initial impression on what this wording means has yet to reveal itself to me at this point in the reading. Nietzsche has been drawing our attention to the vocalness of this crowd that Zarathustra has been trying to preach his philosophies to, And all of a sudden, we're seeing opposite action of everything that we've seen thus far with this group of people. So now mouths are mute, eyes are fixed, they're at attention. In the meantime, of course, and I've written here assumptive language because it's a very specific word choice. You could have just said, in the meantime, the rope dancer had commenced his performance. So that, of course, there is showing us just the natural course of events playing out according to the 5 previous aphorisms that we've read through. If you recall from section 5, Zarathustra used the idea of a rope walker, tightrope walker, in his own type of metaphor for life and death. And this is a very intentional visual throughout the prologue so far. It hung above the marketplace and the people. And a thought that I had on one of my readings through this passage, you find here where I say, we are what we eat, as in we are what we consume, whether that be entertainment or conversations or friendships, relationships. Here we're talking about entertainment. This is the type of entertainment that this community is accustomed to. Then we can correlate that norm, that social norm, to their reactions to the Zarathustra. He came in and totally disrupted that social norm by speaking ultra philosophically, and he's asking them to beg the question, to examine their lives. We get our first example made, and that just so happens to be the tightrope walker. Let's jump down a little bit to use some specific language here. What dost thou hear between the towers? And I want to pay attention to the word tower. In the tower is the place for thee. Thou shouldst be locked up. To one better than thyself thou blockest the way. So the idea of towers, in combination with this metaphor of walking across this abyss of people, this abyss of the unknown, we could see tower on each side as the beginning of life, the end of life, and man, according to Zarathustra, man is neither beginning nor end, but the journey between. So we're just seeing more and more reinforcement through specific language use of those key metaphors. And then we're tying back to the very beginning, the thesis or the claim of this passage. There happened the frightful thing which made every mouth mute and every eye fixed. So he's pretty immediately tying, this can be considered a bit of the introduction. And now we're being reminded of the thesis right here, down here. So that's just that's a good way to kind of frame it in your mind structurally. He uttered a yell like a devil. So anytime we see the word like or as, and we're comparing one subject to another subject, we know that's a simile. He uttered a yell like a devil. He's being compared to a devil figure. So let's keep that in mind as we read on. And jumped over the other who was in his way. I think in his way really is a state of mind or a perspective. He was in his way in the sense that this devil man wanted to get there quicker, but he isn't in his way if he just has some patience and understands that he's putting not only his life at stake, but this other man's life at stake by doing this risky maneuver. And then we see the latter, however, whenever we're talking about the former and the latter of two things, former is the first, latter is the last. This is a good way to think of that. When he thus saw his rival triumph, lost at the same time his head and his footing on the rope. We could interpret the word head and the word footing to be symbolic of the soul and the body, and the fact that they were lost at the same time could symbolize that this individual's soul and his body are in sync, that he is, as we see later on, living to his calling, his chosen calling. And if we take a psychoanalytical approach to this, when you think of his head, you think psychology, so his psychological state, literally and figuratively, was shattered. He threw his pole away, got shot downwards faster than it, like an eddy of arms and legs into the depth. Whenever you see things like the instead of a or an, that can symbolize that it's the one and only, one depth, the word choice of the and not a in this case, because depth is the next word. The marketplace and the people were like the sea when the storm cometh on. They all flew apart and in disorder. So disorder from our previous videos, we could put forward this idea of entropy through disorder, even though Nietzsche wouldn't have the scientific idea of entropy. It is something that we can bring in with our modern lens. It's an argument that you can make for sure. You just have to provide textual and critical evidence. You can't make any sort of solid claim without backing it up with textual evidence or outside sources or anything like that. You can make pretty much any argument as long as you have textual evidence. All right. They all flew apart and in disorder, especially where the body was about to fall. So here, if we're keeping in the back of our minds that biblical lens, so putting on the biblical lens, this is clear imagery of Moses parting the Red Sea. Here, Zarathustra is our sort of stand-in Moses figure. You know, he came down from the mountain with a message, and now this sea of people is parting, but he's staying put. The man falls directly beside him. That's significant. It's a key word choice, and we see that here with especially. Implies a different crowd of people with a different core belief could have tried to catch him, but they didn't. But Zarathustra stayed. Just beside him fell the body, but he was still alive when he falls. And after a while, consciousness returned to the shattered man. We see a reinforcement of our previous claim connect up here. So shattered literally and figuratively, his head, his footing, he lost them at the same time. And he asked Zarathustra, "What art thou doing here? I knew long ago that the devil would trip me up." And so that's devil once again. We see he uttered a yell like the devil. So the man that led him to his death, his doom, was the devil personified in that moment. He was like the devil. This poor man that's been injured is saying he knew the devil would trip me up. And we can take that literally, okay, that other guy is a devil to me, but, you know, we've got to take it to that next literary level and realize that we also mean the literal idea of the devil. "Now he draggeth me to hell. Wilt thou prevent him?" So Zarathustra's been talking a big talk to all these folks, and this tightrope walker saying in his most desperate hour of need, can you prevent him? Will you prevent him? Not can, wilt. Will you? So that implies that part of him believes in what Zarathustra's been saying. And we see Zarathustra say, "On mine honor, my friend, there is nothing of all that whereof thou speakest. There is no devil and no hell." So Zarathustra stating his claim very directly, strongly here. "Thy soul will be dead even sooner than thy body." So this line is really, really, really reinforcing the idea of the Superman and the idea of Mother Nature supreme. So the fact that the soul will be dead even sooner than thy body, you know, typical religious or Catholic Christian belief here, which is what we're comparing and contrasting or juxtaposing Zarathustra's story to, is that the body dies before the soul, and then the soul rises either to heaven or hell, or takes a pit stop in purgatory. So he is outright asserting the opposite of that. And he's saying, because of this, you don't need to fear anything anymore. No pain, no nothing. We get this response from this man who's been injured. He looks up distrustfully. And I just put Stephen King no here because he's not a huge fan of adverbs, but that is such a side point. "If thou speakest the truth," he said, "I lose nothing when I lose my life. I am not much more than an animal which hath been taught to dance by blows and scanty fare." This man's argument is he loses nothing when he loses his life, therefore his life meant nothing. But Zarathustra says, not at all. "Thou hast made danger thy calling." So here, "thou hast made danger," that is clear language asserting free will and choice. So Zarathustra believes that humanity has free will and choice to be or do whatever they want to be. Hence, the Superman. "Therein there is nothing contemptible. Now thou perished by thy calling. Therefore," so since this exists, now this is going to happen, an if-then statement, "will I bury thee with mine own hands." When Zarathustra had said this, the dying one did not reply further, but he moved his hand as if he sought the hand of Zarathustra in gratitude. So we see hand mentioned 3 times here, And if we put back on that biblical lens, we could see, okay, 3 hands makes me think of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. But here we see the hands of Zarathustra, the hand of the dying man, and then the movement of the dying man's hand to Zarathustra's. And this really is, as I wrote down here, Zarathustra's first breakthrough, and we see gratitude expressed not verbally but physically. And this man ultimately is saying a big thank you to Zarathustra, telling him that his life matters, while comforting him in his final moments. And that's a really powerful piece of evidence to Zarathustra's message going forward. He kind of has had his first public breakthrough. All right, that is section 6 of the prologue all done. Thanks for reading with me. I know it can feel intimidating or a bit dense at first, but the key to this is just practice and repetition. And, that's the whole thesis with this channel, that we can break down texts bit by bit and chip away at them in our understanding and work our way up to being able to do this with any type of text at any length. So I really hope this was helpful in deepening your understanding of some literary criticisms. I've pinned a question in the comments below if you'd like to think more about this passage. And if you'd like to catch up on earlier sections of Thus Spake Zarathustra, there's a link below or a full playlist available on my channel. I'll catch you in the next section.